This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Welcome in. It is Long Shots on VSiN and the VSiN Podcasting Network. I am Kelley Bydlon. That is Wes Reynolds. We're here to talk some golf betting with you. Wes, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Kelley. Eager to get into the National Open north of the border. And then we have one south of the Canadian border, that big one next week at Shinnecock called the U.S. Open.
Yeah, that's right. We got the U.S. Open next week, Canadian Open this week. We will be hitting on both of them here. No Matt Brown with us this week. It's all good. He's taking a couple days off. Wes, you got me and Wes, though. We'll be running through everything for Canadian Open. We'll hit on the U.S. Open. But first, want to take us back to last week and the Memorial. And Wes, I am lucky I got a bit of a chop on first round leader with JJ Spawn because it was pretty damn ugly after that. I don't think a good tournament overall for the pod, but how did it turn out for you?
Yeah, it ended up not being a total disaster. It ended up being just a small loser thanks to some rallies on the placement markets on Sunday. But nobody really in the mix for me. And if anybody had JT Poston, shout out to you.
Good on you. Yep.
I did not. He did not pop anywhere for me. And I think a lot of it was the fact that even though he had been playing okay, I mean, he's making most of his cuts, 9 of 12 so far this year, he did not have a top 20 finish all season. And when you look at the profile of JT Poston, who I believe was 110 to 1, I saw like pre-tournament, he's a guy that wins on kind of these birdie fest type courses, like the Wyndham at Sedgefield, right here in Las Vegas at TPC Summerlin for the Shriners, the John Deere Classic. Like, he's not the guy, even though he's a 3-time PGA Tour winner, that wins these kind of events, but he gets the biggest win of his career on the second playoff hole, even though he had a 4-shot lead at one point on the back nine, and it looked like he was going to play his way out of it. Ends up getting in that playoff, had to make birdie, by the way, at the last, where nobody's making birdie on 18 with that kind of pressure. Jack Nicklaus, of course, the host of the Memorial, did comment on that. He's like, imagine birdie in that hole there, and JT Poston certainly did. Ends up with the playoff with Ryan Gerard. Ryan Gerard has to settle for another runner-up. He is still looking for that first win. I believe if you include that finish in Mauritius, where he got into the Masters going over there and playing in December on the DP World Tour, I believe that's like 4 runners-up in the last about 6 months for Ryan Gerard. So, you know, eventually he's going to get the win, but he had to think, okay, this is my time, and it wasn't. JT Poston ends up getting there. Kind of had a bunch leaderboard, by the way, late on Sunday. So, you know, few guys had cracks at it. I think Sam Burns did. I think Tommy Fleetwood did. JJ Spawn did. A couple others. Wyndham Clark, once again, another good finish. He won 2 weeks ago at the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson, and ends up finishing third. So you had a few guys in that mix there, but overall, pretty difficult course, pretty difficult setup. You did not have a lot of the big names up at the top. Rory wasn't up at the top really throughout. Scotty Scheffler wasn't at the top. Xander Schauffele. So you had good quality players, but maybe not the elite up there at the top. But I actually think it made for a pretty fun tournament to watch because you didn't know what was going to happen. And 12 under par, that's what they want at the Memorial, to be the fair winning score. And we said kind of in that range of 7 to 13 under, and that's what it ended up being.
Yeah, I'm with you. No way in hell you saw JT Poston coming. If you did, good on you. I know we did have at least one listener who tweeted at me. He had 111 to 1 on Poston in the winner without Scotty Scheffler market. So good hit there. I'm with you, Wes. Not a name I would have even remotely considered, so I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I think JT Poston did you brought it up. You did a quality thing for the tournament and actually giving back a couple shots early in that first round, right? It brought some of these other guys in. I was like, oh, wow, we're actually going to have an exciting finish here. And we did. You're right. There were plenty of chances for Gerard, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Sam Burns to really get up there and take it away. And credit to Poston for hanging on and then going and winning it in the playoff. And man, I'm with you. I think for Ryan Gerard, this has got to be getting frustrating at this point. He's put together a lot of quality golf this year and can't get that win. You know, I think some of these other guys we can just quickly go through. I think there's some positives to take away. I keep circling back to the Masters. You know, PGA, we were going into a course we're more unfamiliar with, and that's going to be a little bit of the case with the U.S. Open here coming up. But the Masters, it just felt like there were so many big names playing such quality golf and in such good form heading into that. And I don't know that we have the same thing heading into the U.S. Open. It doesn't feel that way to me as far as the big guns all playing well kind of at the same time. But, man, there's some names. There's some of those mid-level names that are really, really looking good. You brought up Wyndham Clark. I think this is a much better looking stat profile for Wyndham Clark than his win just a couple weeks ago where he gained over 12 strokes with the putter. Like, it was all the putter that week. It was all the putter. So seeing Wyndham Clark get it done with other parts of his game is something that's just noteworthy to me. Tommy Fleetwood, right, in a very kind of being the best of the big names in this field, noteworthy too. I think as last week, it really felt like the first week that we saw Fleetwood's kind of outright odds start to drift to a point where, I mean, he was almost touching almost 30-1 last week. So, that stuck out to me. And then Sam Burns, right? Sam Burns is locked back in, man. He's locked back in. This putter is ridiculous. It's back to him gaining with it every single week. God, I had his stats pulled up here just right now. It's just when the putter's going like this, and if you're watching on YouTube, watching at home, we appreciate it. But and it's over 4 strokes last week and the week before, 2 strokes over at the Truist. He lost, not even a full stroke at the Cadillac, but then it's 5 at the Heritage, 6 at the Masters. The putter's back locked in, and when he can get just pretty good ball striking numbers, he really is a different level golfer. If you've listened to this podcast, you've listened to Matt Brown bet a lot of Sam Burns over the years, and this is where he gets frustrated, right? The putter's so good, and it's just if he can put the rest of his game together, he really does become a different level of player and a high level player. So I think impressed out of him. And then look, a couple guys that we've been betting, a couple guys we've been betting, but really, really playing hot right now. Chris Rayton, Alex Fitzpatrick. Feels like one of us has been on one of those guys kind of each week here recently. Spoiler alert, that's not going to end this week. We'll circle back to those guys. Siwoo Kim, another top 10 finish, right? Eric Cole, I think another guy that has the putter running hot like he usually does, but he's putting together some finishes here now. So I think just a few of those guys, maybe not the biggest names in the world, maybe not the first guys you're going to look at the U.S. Open, but as far as heading into this weekend beyond, I think those are some guys to have on your radar, Wes.
Yeah, Kelley, and you mentioned a couple of the guys in that sequence there that have some good, decent recent history at the U.S. Open. Remember Sam Burns last year at Oakmont was the 36 and the 54-hole leader at the U.S. Open, ends up kind of falling down on Sunday. I believe T7, where J.J. Spawn was the only player, by the way, to finish under par at 1 under. And last year's Oakmont, I think is kind of going to resemble what this year's Shinnecock Hills is going to be in terms of leaderboard. I think you'll have a couple big names up there, but you'll have a lot of those guys in the mid-range, I think, that certainly have a great chance. And I think the U.S. Open, because of the difficulty of the course, that brings more into play. And you also mentioned Tommy Fleetwood. The last time the U.S. Open was played in Shinnecock was 2018. And Tommy Fleetwood was the runner-up, and he shot that great Sunday 63 and almost got into a playoff with the eventual winner, Brooks Koepka, who, by the way, won that event at Shinnecock at +1. Mm-hmm. So the last 4 U.S. Opens at Shinnecock, if you look at the winning scores, and this dates all the way back to 1986, 1 over, 4 under, even par, 1 under. So it's going to be a little bit similar, I think, to Oakmont last year. It's a very difficult course, a par 70, 74, 44, big greens, but that means your lag putting is going to have to be good. Tough to get it close to the hole. And this is not going to be like the PGA Championship, where if you miss a fairway badly, you don't get penalized. But if you miss it by inches, you get penalized. You miss fairways at the U.S. Open, you got to take your medicine. Mm-hmm. This is the big stuff. This is the 5-inch thick rough. So you're not going to have very low scoring here at the U.S. Open. So this is going to be about grinding. And like later on when we talk more RBC, we're going to get into kind of the modeling, and we'll certainly do that next week on the episode of Long Shots covering the U.S. Open. We try to model all this stuff. But a lot of it for the U.S. Open is who's going to make the least amount of mistakes. Even after we've gone through approach and around the green and lag putting and off the tee and all the metrics we look at every single week in and out, it's going to be hard because you have to just find a guy that's going to make the fewest mistakes and the guys that recover from their mistakes, because you're going to make them at the U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills. So this is a classical U.S. Open design in the northeastern part of the United States. We kind of know what we're getting. Some years when we get these major championships with different courses in the rotation, we don't know. But I think we know exactly what we're getting here at Shinnecock Hills, where penalized for missing the fairway. And it's going to be hard. It's a grind. And that's why I love the U.S. Open, because it's the hardest major of the year. And it gets even the best in the world frustrated, like us, the rest of us weekend hackers would be just playing a normal round, because it is highly difficult. And you're going to have to be patient. You're going to hear that word a lot, patience, at the U.S. Open, I think. So Scotty Scheffler going to be the favorite, though. He's trying to complete that career Grand Slam, and he turns 30. And it's Father's Day weekend, so that narrative, we got multiple narrative streets, multiple forks in the road in which to go with Scotty Scheffler to kind of fit that angle. But leaderboard on the odds board kind of tightening up a little bit with Scotty not having the win equity he's had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, right now, U.S. Open odds over at DraftKings. Scotty Scheffler, 4-1 is your favorite. Rory McIlroy, 8-1. John Rahm, 12-1. Bryson DeChambeau, 16-1. Cameron Young, Xander Schauffele, 18-1. Everybody else, 20-1 or longer. Like Wes said, plenty of U.S. Open talk to come from us on this podcast. We'll be doing that all of next week. When we come back, we will dive into the RBC Canadian Open.
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Welcome back to Long Shots here on VSiN and the VSiN Podcasting Network. Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds here with you this week. Just talked a little Memorial, a little U.S. Open. Looking forward to that one next week. No, everybody, as the NBA Finals are winding down, Stanley Cup Finals winding down, everybody's attention will be shifting over to the golf world, which we love, Wes. When we get more people interested in golf and asking us more questions, we love that. By the way, give us a follow on Twitter at Wes Reynolds 1. Right, Wes? No, wait. I just screw that up? I would.
No. You got it. Wes Reynolds in the number 1.
And then at Kelley Bydlon for me, man, I would have had a heart attack if I screwed that up. I've been getting that. I've been knowing that off the top of my head for like the past decade. That would have terrified me if I screwed that one up. But yeah, Wes, I know I can speak for you because I remember bugging you probably about stuff a dozen years ago. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter, guys. Whatever, any golf betting questions you have, market questions. I know I've gotten some great each way and one and done questions and stuff like that over this course of the season. So yeah, please bring those our way. I look, I can speak from experience when you're starting out betting, for me a long time ago at this point, but just having resources and people to bounce questions off of, it's great. And we love talking it, right, Wes? So, hit us up. Love talking golf, love talking betting, love talking any kind of those strategy questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, get us on the Twitter, on the YouTube link, wherever you go and wherever you get your podcast. We always appreciate good reviews. If you have a bad one, you can keep that to yourself. What do they say? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So
yeah, unless it's constructive. I want to hear if it's constructive.
Yes, absolutely. We welcome that.
So every week, little tip here, outside of listening to this fine podcast, you can go over to VSiN.com and you'll find one of the best golf write-ups on a weekly basis. I was reading them before I ever started doing shows with the guy, Wes Reynolds, previewing the RBC Canadian Open. Here's a little sneak peek. If you are watching at home, again, VSiN.com, sign up now. Specials going all the time for the website. Let me drop that video before I get fined by a specific league. But yeah, that's go to VSiN.com each week. You can check that out. Wes, we are transitioning now to the RBC Canadian Open. Look at this odds board here. We are a week before the U.S. Open, so you don't have the biggest of the big names playing in this. But as we see with the Canadian Open, it's kind of become a trend here, especially in recent years. You get at least some of the bigger British names that come over. The Canadian crew is all over there. And then, some of the guys that have just historically had some success north of the border play here often. This is also now fallen in a time of the year for the golf calendar where some of the guys that are just getting out of college are able to jump in there. So I know we got a couple of those in the field this week. So it's an interesting field. You might not have the superstar monster names at the top, and we don't have any Rory McIlroy this year, which we have seen the past couple years of the Canadian Open. But Tommy Fleetwood is your short shot, at least at DraftKings. He's plus 1150 there right now. Matt Fitzpatrick 12-1, Sam Burns plus 1275. Then we dip down to Wyndham Clark at plus 2350. That's where Morikawa is as well. Bobby Mack, little under 25-1. Chris Rayton 25-1. Justin Rose 26-1. Brooks Koepka 27-1, Nikolai Højgaard 29-1. Everybody else 30-1 or longer. Wes, I mentioned the article you do over at vsin.com. Gives you a little bit of preview of what the field is going to look like, what the course is going to look like. So let's start there with the course. This is always a challenge for us every week. We hit on it in the first segment. We dive heavily into stats when it comes to golf betting. We like to run our own kind of stat models here using different sites like rickrungood.com, Fantasy National, Data Golf, BetSperts, all the great sites out there that really offer a lot of resources to the golf bettor. We like to go in. Our job is to go in, examine these golf courses and figure out what stats are going to matter the most, and then kind of go run that in our models. Now, we saw this course last season, and this is TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley, the North Course. This is going to be a par 70, 7,300 yards, wide fairways, about average width is about 39 yards. It's what you're going to see on the card. Do have some heavy rough, but wide fairways. Only 3 water danger holes, 48 bunkers, and then some big bent/poa greens, 6,500 square feet. So, Wes, I'm going to toss this over to you. What do you see in this course this year? What do you think we saw out of it and we learned last year where we saw Ryan Foxwood at this tournament?
Yeah, the 113th RBC Canadian Open, returning back to TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley, as you mentioned, Kelley. Really, it was kind of all over the place because we only have one tournament of data where you had some guys that made it up off the tee where they gained a lot of their strokes. You had some guys that gained on approach. You had some guys that gained putting last year. So 73.89 is the stock yardage, a par 70, like you mentioned. But what they did was kind of interesting. Ian Andrew was the redesigner, Canadian-based architect who also did St. George's, which hosted the 2022 Canadian Open, won by Rory McIlroy. When he restored this, he shortened some of the par 5s and they lengthened some of the par 4s. You have 5 par 4s on this layout that are 500 yards or longer. So not exactly short par 4s. And he said he wanted to kind of bring the tee to green game back into it, right? Where you're not taking the long players out of the game and you're not taking the shorter hitters off the tee out of the game. Some more short grass chipping areas around the bent POA greens didn't give the guys a lot of problems last year. 6,500 square feet, 12 on the stimp. They're fairly straightforward green complexes, but the putting, like this can be, this can turn into a putting contest because the fairways, like you mentioned, are pretty wide. I think like 39 yards wide on average. So these are gettable. You don't want to miss them though. So that doesn't mean you want to take accuracy out of play because it is 4-inch thick rough, not quite US Open, but there's certainly a penalty for missing fairways. If you're looking at maybe some crossover courses, I mentioned St. George's, which hosted the RBC a couple of years ago. Detroit Golf Club, where they have the Rocket Mortgage, Deer Run, where they have the John Deere, Glen Abbey, another regular rotation course for the RBC Canadian Open, maybe a little TPC Craig Ranch, Memorial Park, which is the Houston Open. So, I don't want to make this out that it's a total birdie fest, but last year the winning score, by the way, you mentioned Ryan Fox, 18 under 262, where he did beat my ticket, Sam Burns, that I had at 28-1 in the playoff. I've actually lost playoffs 2 of the last 3 years here. 2025, 2023 also had Tommy Fleetwood and Nick Taylor, by the way, the first Canadian since 1954 to win his home open, won in 2023, where he made that like 72-foot putt on the playoff hole. So you mentioned earlier that large Canadian contingent: Nick Taylor, Corey Connors, Taylor Pendriff, Matt Hughes, Adam Hadwin, Sudarshan, Yella Miraju, several others. So there are a lot of Canadians here, but you haven't seen a lot of Canadians win their National Open because there's a little bit extra pressure, because they're going to treat this almost like it's a major championship, because you want to win in your home country for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple other notes, and a couple of these I grabbed from Ron Close, who does excellent work over at Bet Spurts. And 7th longest course is what it ended up being last year. So it definitely going to be, it's going to test you with some distance. You talked about it, just kind of a little bit of the redesigns, and they added some length onto some of these holes. It was kind of one of the best ways that they could toughen this up at least a little bit. So it is long, but we talked about those generous fairways, almost 40 yards. That resulted in this course being the second easiest course to gain off the tee last year on the PGA Tour. You talked about the easy scoring. This was over a stroke under par, 17th easiest course that we did see on tour last year, 4th easiest when it came to just approach shots. So fairly easy ball striking, which leads you. I think some of the around the green is somewhat interesting. You brought it up, Wes, with some of the shaved runoff areas. Some of the traps are put in some difficult positions, but the greens are so damn big, and the fairways are so damn big, which is actually counter to what we said just a couple weeks ago. A couple courses we ran into of the very tight fairways and the small greens. Exact opposite here. Plenty of room to work with off the tee, and some big greens to hit into. So I think around the green is not going to matter as much because you have those big greens to hit into. But yeah, it is going to become. I think this is important to say. We've only seen this for a year, small sample size worth of data for us to go off of, but big greens turns into a bit of a putting contest, and you're going to want to avoid those the 3 putts, and lag putting is going to become very, very important.
Absolutely. So we wouldn't expect that this is going to cause them too much trouble. Weather going to get some rain, it looks like, early in the week, and then it's going to cool off over the weekend. Now, if the wind blows, this can be a little bit of a difficult trek for these guys, but seems relatively calm. I think probably the same type of scoring is going to be in order here when you're looking at mid to high teens under par.
Yeah, did find that interesting. We were talking about that a bit before we started recording. I mean, hey, this looks worse than what I looked at it yesterday. I bring this up all the time. If you're listening at home, you probably don't have deadlines on like articles and podcasts and stuff like we do, where we have to get this content out. I always recommend, there's no reason why you can't put those bets in right before these guys tee off, or guess what? There's live betting. You can put them in after they tee off even. And weather's important, and it can change things here when it comes to golf. And this is when we start to talk about wind that matters. I mean, wind that's in the forecast right now, we'll see it up into 26. It's going to peak at gust-wise on Thursday. That's not nothing. But then you really get into Friday, and it's going to be consistent wind speed in the teens and peaking at 30-mile-an-hour gusts, and it kind of carries over into the weekend. So something to monitor here. It doesn't look like for if you're watching at home, just a little wind finder graphics that I have up right now, it doesn't look like there's going to be an extreme wave advantage or anything right now. But, keep an eye on that. Maybe there is something that develops here for an early Thursday, late Friday or something like that, if it's really going to be ugly early on Friday morning. But something to check back into, check in before you put your bets in. Let's see, Wes, anything else that you think from last year we got to carry over, really be on top of, that you saw result-wise last year carrying over to this year?
No, I think that it's a little bit, I don't want to say flying blind here, but you didn't have like one profile of player where it's like, okay, these were all bombers, or these were all, pinpoint accuracy guys or iron guys. Like, you really had kind of a diverse leaderboard here, and I think that's probably going to be in order once again.
Yeah, I would think that, we're going to go into how we kind of weighed stuff here when we come back, and we'll see what we kind of thought mattered the most. Whenever look, approach is always going to be the most important. We make a big deal out of it whenever we say approach isn't the most important stat that week. Guess what? It's still the most important. It's going to be the most important this week. I do tend to overweight on purpose, kind of off the tee stuff when I think there's wide open, fairways and stuff in front of these guys. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from just looking into stuff last year. These guys pulled driver out on over 80% of the tee boxes. Like it's grip it and rip it. You got 40 yards on average of fairway width there. A lot of fairway to work with. Yes, the rough could be a little penal, but I wouldn't be overly concerned about it with off the tee and guys that spray. That 40 yards is pretty damn wide, and honestly, in the landing zones, it's even wider in some places. So, I did go pretty heavy with some guys looking at distance and keying in on that. But when we come back, Wes and I will kind of go through everything that we really did focus in on when we were building up our stat models this week, and we will tell you what that resulted in when it comes to bets. All that when we come back on Long Shots.
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Welcome back to Long Shots. That's Wes Reynolds. I'm Kelley Bydlon. We're going through the RBC Canadian Open, getting you ready to bet the Canadian Open before we head down south of the border for the U.S. Open next week, where we will have plenty of coverage all over VSiN, VSiN.com. Make sure to check in on that. But in Canada, little north of Toronto, I remember this was a big deal last year, Wes. We're not in Toronto. Everybody in Toronto is going to complain about how it's like an hour outside of Toronto, even though we're at TPC Toronto. Don't ask me. It's not affecting us. We're here in Las Vegas. We're just betting golf. We talked about the course, though, here last segment, and, we only have a year to go off of with this stuff. If you've listened to this podcast this year, you've run into at least a couple episodes where we are attacking courses that we either have not seen before or have not seen in a while. We are very stat reliant, so we like more data than what we have on this course. But we saw this play out fairly easy last year. Wes, what did you kind of take and plug into the model this week that you think is going to be more important than the rest?
Yeah, I think with the limited course history here, Kelley, you want to kind of get like a starting point. And this might be not a really specific stat. It's kind of a more overarching thing. And that was tee to green, strokes gained tee to green. I think that gives you at least a good baseline to start from. And ordinarily it's usually going to do, even though most weeks are probably a little bit more specific. So strokes gained tee to green. Approach, even though this was pretty easy to gain on approach here last year due to the receptive greens that are pretty darn big. So strokes gained approach, I always feel, has to have some kind of weight week in and week out.
Wes, I'm gonna put a pause on you right there for people that are that are new, maybe starting out and trying to do things, at least in similar ways to us. Fair to say those are the two stats you'd start with just blind on any golf course that you're presented with for the first time?
Yeah, certainly. More often than not, that's where I'm going to go, because I think that's going to pinpoint at least a couple guys.
Mm-hmm.
When you're building out like an outright card, or you're doing placement markets, or guys maybe to target to play in matchups, that's kind of I think you're a good gauge from which to start with. And then some weeks we get more specific and some weeks we don't. And I know we've had this discussion on previous Long Shots podcasts. I know Matt Brown and I kind of using a little less of those proximity buckets when you're looking at specific yards on your approach shots, whether it's 200 or more yards or 150 to 175 or whatever. Now, I did use one this week because I did want to look at a little wedge play.
Mm-hmm.
And wedge buckets are anywhere from probably like 100 to 150. There's some that are shorter, maybe some that are a little longer, but less than half of the approach shots on this course are going to come from that range. So I think you want to be pretty tidy with that wedge game. In terms of off the tee, if you're looking at it whichever way you want to go, I think it's maybe a little bit more of a distance bias than it is an accuracy. Not that you want to rule out accuracy, but I think if you're weighing it this week, you want to weigh distance maybe just a little bit more, because we saw some guys last year, the Sam Burnses and the Cameron Youngs, pretty big hitters off the tee that were right in the mix last year. So probably a couple of them bombers are going to do the same. Par fours scoring, I think, is going to be important. Like I mentioned, Ian Andrew lengthened a lot of the par fours where you got 5 of them over 500 yards, which you don't see very often. And then some of the par fives, like there's no real like 660-yard behemoth par 5 necessarily on this course. So par 4 scoring, par 4 performance, whatever you want to look at, I felt was a good way to go. Like we mentioned, the wind could blow early in the week, maybe gets a little bit more benign and calm on the weekends, but if it doesn't blow that much, there is the potential for very low scoring. So I thought birdie or better. You could look at opportunities gained if you want to go ahead and do that. And then I did put a little putting here. I went strokes gained, just traditional putting. I didn't go specifically with the bent POA surface that we have here. You certainly could do that, but I kind of wanted like a baseline putting here, guys that are pretty consistent week in and week out. And that's really all I did. I did not do as much this week, just simply because we have very limited background on this. So it's a little bit of a guessing game. When you look at the leaderboard last year at this event, some guys were great putting, some guys were great with the irons, and some guys were great with the driver. And there wasn't really one like path to victory like you see most years at some other events where the course is more regular.
Yeah, it's look, I enjoy this challenge, but it is a challenge. And you know, for a couple of the tournaments that we've been presented with this same sort of challenge this year, I frankly haven't done all that great. So look, I think this is a fun challenge for us to have, but it's a week before a major. We offer up this advice a lot. No reason you don't have to bet this as big as you do another tournament or another card. You can dial back a number of bets. You can dial back stake size if you want to do that. You don't want to head into next week feel like you're bleeding money already. You want to head into the U.S. Open, right? Have some money to gamble there, whether that's for fun or or you're really a serious golf bettor. You want to make sure you have some bullets left over for next week. So just a recommendation that I would make to a lot of people out there. And I'm taking my own advice this week. This is a course we've only seen once. I think you broke it down well, Wes. I think there's some signal that we can take off that leaderboard last year of what works here. But yeah, guys got it done in different ways. And overall, personally, I just think this is a pretty damn easy golf course and you can beat it in multiple different ways. But yeah, you named a lot of the stats that I went factored in as well. Off the tee, brought up before, one of the easiest courses just to gain strokes off the tee. Doesn't matter how you're doing it, distance or accuracy. I did weigh distance pretty heavy this week, though, just seeing how much these guys pulled driver last year. You did see a couple of those names on the top of the board that are big hitters. And I just, man, such wide fairways. These guys are going to grip it and rip it. So I think if you are want to look there, I think driving distance is a good look. Do think you need to keep some accuracy in mind, though, for sure. There's very little trouble on this golf course, but if you go mess around in that long rough, it's going to be more difficult than not. Strokes gained approach, I'm with you there, and I did do tee to green. I did start with that. I should have mentioned that, just like you did, like you said, Wes. When we were kind of approaching a newer golf course, that is something that I factor in all the time. So did that, and then strokes gained approach. I did the wedge buckets as well, so I'm with you there. And then a bunch of scoring stats from approach too. Opportunities gained, you mentioned as well. That is approach shots within 15 feet, set you up for a birdie opportunity. I think you want to look at that stuff this week. Birdies are better, but played that as well. I did play a little bit of par fours as well. That's something you're going to pretty typically see with me. Par 72s where we get 4 par fives. Par 5 scoring almost always is going to be a major factor. I'm usually going to incorporate it. And guess what? When we get par 70s with 2 less par 5s, I want to look at the par 4s a little bit more. So a lot of times there's not a whole lot more to it for me than just that. So par 4 scoring did pop that in. And then, I messed around with some putting stats too, just strokes gained putting overall like you did. And then 3 putt avoidance, since we're on these big greens. You can't be putting it all around the damn green. Get up and down, get in there in a couple putts. at least is what you're looking for this week. And then if you're over at Rick Rungood, I like using his bonus putting stat. Just kind of what's your success rate within 5 feet or it's outside 20, I think. So basically, what are you doing with those bomb putts? And are you cleaning up on the easy ones? Because if we're expecting someone to go out and score low this week, Wes, those are the type of putting performances you're going to need, right? Draining some bomb putts and then making the easy ones, right?
Like that's something we're going to use probably for the next week too at the U.S. Open, approach putt performance, which is like your lag putting, because you're not going to be always, 10 feet for birdie, even though that seems like what Scotty Scheffler's done for like the last 3 years. It's like that guy's always within 15 feet. Not so much next week at the U.S. Open. So you will get a little bit of that this week, but it'll be way more pronounced next week at Shinnecock.
Okay, we're going to get to our bets on the other side of the break here. Well, we've got a minute, though. I'm going to ask Wes Reynolds a question, just golf gossip question. Do we know what's going on with Collin Morikawa this week? Because it is driving me a little nuts. Sounds like he is on possible baby watch, or the baby's already arrived. This is where we deal with golf, and we don't really get people reporting on this kind of stuff. Have you seen anything more on Collin Morikawa? He's still in the field. I know that.
I have not, because he was a withdrawal last week at the Memorial. He and both Victor Hovland. Now, Victor Hovland's had a back issue, but we know Collin Morikawa had one earlier in the year. But Jack Nicklaus, who of course is the organizer and runs the Memorial tournament, said he was told it was like baby on the way. So I haven't seen it, but sometimes these guys aren't really ready to divulge or disclose any news. And then all of a sudden you see it on Instagram. It's like, oh my God, congratulations. But I have not seen anything as we record here on Tuesday.
Just something to put on people's radar. Like Wes just said, we're recording Tuesday afternoon. You might see Collin Morikawa talking at a microphone about his newborn baby here in just a couple hours. Who knows? But just something to have on your radar if you are betting this week. That's a bit of a question mark for me, for a guy that, when he's been healthy this year, has played some really, really awesome golf. But we will get into the rest of the odds board and all the bets that we made when we come back right here on Long Shots.
This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Welcome back to Long Shots. Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds here, previewing the RBC Canadian Open. Make sure to head over to VSiN.com every week to get Wes's write-ups on the tournaments. That's also where you can find all of our bets that we make each and every week on the PGA Tour, and if you're Wes Reynolds, beyond the PGA Tour. But Matt and I are pretty boring. We stick to the PGA Tour. RBC Canadian Open, Wes. All right, we mentioned the favorites. At Tommy Fleetwood plus 1150, Matt Fitzpatrick 12-1, Sam Burns just longer than that, playing some quality golf recently. He's a little bit less than 13-1 over at DraftKings. Then we drift out into the 20s. Before you start going through the bets, top of the board there, Fleetwood, Fitz, Burns. Did you bet any of them, or did you get close to betting any of them?
I was tempted on Sam Burns, and that's still, could be a placement market option. By the way, placement markets, depending on when you're watching this very program, Long Shots, may already be up there at vsin.com/picks. But typically on Wednesday is when I put out those top 10s, top 20s, top 30s, and the like. So Sam Burns, I will have something on that, but I thought that the number was just a little bit small for me. Even though he played very, very well at the Memorial last week, and I had him last year at double the price at 28-1, where, okay, he's in this putting contest with Ryan Fox, and Sam Burns was the number one ranked putter on the tour going into that week. And then he couldn't make anything, and that kind of happened at Memorial last week. Late in the Sunday back nine, just couldn't drain any putts, and it's like, when in doubt, this guy's going to drain him, and he just didn't. But Sam Burns was really the guy I think I got close with of those guys kind of in the teens or in the 20s range.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I do think he'd be the guy if I had to bet. No, you know what? He'd still be three. He'd still be third out of those three if I had to bet one of them. I'm actually surprised he's that short Frankly, a little surprised Fleetwood and Fitz are that short as well.
Mm-hmm.
In this field, no real interest in any of those three for me. I mean, look, all three of them are great golfers. I think Sam Burns is in awesome form right now. But man, that is a short Burns number. So
Yeah.
pretty easy pass for me. But you know what? We said it a couple weeks ago. Looks like a odds board to me that's beatable in the outright market at least. You know, there's no big scary Scotty Scheffler or anything like that up there this week. So all right, we passed on those three. Where'd you start your card at?
I started kind of in the mid-range this week, and there are a lot of guys kind of clumped together in that mid-range that I think you could make cases for. First guy I'm going to make a case for is Brooks Koepka, though, at 33-1. Limited starts this year. He's not in the signature events because he doesn't have the FedEx Cup points from the previous season, but very consistent golf of late. 6 top 20s in his last 8 events. Putting is still an issue. He's 136 out of 161 of the qualified players on the PGA Tour, but the ball striking in the tee to green is like elite level right now. Like not one of just the best in the field, but one of the best in the world. Remember last time the U.S. Open was held at Shinnecock, next week's venue, that was Brooks Koepka winning that at 1 over par. So what a better way to return to Southampton in New York than off a victory. So I think Brooks is going to play well this week. And then not too far below him in the price range, 35-1-ish, Nikolai Højgaard, who began 2026 in hot form. And then he's been erratic over the last 3 months. But when he's peaked.
Yeah.
In that time frame, he's got 2 runners-up. Runner-up at Houston, runner-up at the Truist in the last 11 weeks. 3rd in distance, 5th in tee to green, 8th in approach in this field. Missed the cut on debut here last year. I think this course is like tailor-made for him. So Nikolai Højgaard, 35-1. And then here was a number, Kelley, and you know, maybe it's kind of like Mr. Obvious, but I felt like this number was too big on the basis of how he has been playing. I played Alex Fitzpatrick at just a little bit north of 40-1. First PGA Tour victory in his card when he teamed with Matt at the Zurich in New Orleans last month. Now he's looking for that solo victory. And man, if he's not getting close, 4th at the Truist, T6 last week at the Memorial, top 10 at Doral for the Cadillac over the last 7 weeks. So 6 top 10 finishes he has in his last 7 worldwide starts. Keep in mind, he did win an individual event already this season, one on the DP World Tour at the Hero Indian Open. So this is a guy that I'm just going to stick with until he doesn't post a good finish or isn't in the mix. Top 5 over the last 24 rounds in tee to green. Michael Chorbjornsson, 45-1, big hitting young gun, trying to put it all together for his PGA Tour victory. On the kind of lower scoring birdie type tournaments, he's played very well over the last couple of years. Runner up at the Deer, top 4 in Detroit at the Rocket Classic. I think there's a lot of comparison between these two courses. Top 10 at the RSM, top 10 at the Sanderson Farms, and he's also a big hitter, as is Michael Brennan at 54-1. Best finish of 2026, T6 at Colonial. One of the longer hitters off the tee on the PGA Tour. Like, he is up there in the top 5. Longer, easier courses. That dates back to last fall when he won out in Utah on his PGA Tour debut. He also has a lot of experience, by the way, playing in Canada, because he played on a tour called the PGA Tour Americas, where he actually won twice last year and in 2025 on that tour. Also has a top 3 finish on this very course, TPC Toronto, the North Course at Osprey Valley, 2 years ago in one of those PGA Tour Americas events. So Michael Brennan got a nod for me. And then the 2 longer shots, Tony Finau, 70-1, didn't get that U.S. Open spot. He was at the Springfield, Ohio site on Monday. Just missed it by, I think, a shot or 2. Last chance to make the field for Shinnecock. He's missed the first 2 majors already this year. He's driving the ball great. 3rd in strokes gained off the tee at the CJ Cup, 2nd last week at the Memorial. Also has played well in Canada over the years. I mentioned St. George's, same designer, same renovator as we have here at TPC Toronto. 2nd in this event a couple of years ago when it was played there when Rory McIlroy won, and 5th at Glen Abbey. So a good history in this event. And then the longest one I have, 80-ish to 1. I think I got 84 to be approximate. Max Grazerman, who actually did qualify for the U.S. Open. They had 43 players from 10 different sites across the country, also into Ontario, and Max Grazerman got one of those spots. 5 runners-up. We talk about Ryan Gerard, how many runner-up he has. Max Grazerman, 5 in less than 2 calendar years from summer 2024 to today, as he's going for that first career victory. At the CJ Cup, a couple starts ago, first in ball striking, first in approach, second in greens and regulation. Putter can be a little bit all over the place, but this is going to be a random putting week, I think. So Max Grazerman, he's a big long hitter too, and likes to take that driver as all these other guys do. And I think he could play very well this week, 84-1. I thought that was a pretty big price.
Yeah, that's I like that one. I think I got to hit the pause button on Grazerman. Just me personally, this is he rated out very highly for me too. But man, Wes, yeah, we get into some of these modes with some of these guys where it's like, they're gonna rate out like top 15 for me every time, and then they tease you.
And then we look on Thursday and we see 3 over through 5 holes
exactly
in the first round. Like, oh my god! That's gonna miss the cut.
So I will be rooting for you and Max Grazerman, but you can have him this week. I did pass up on him. Man, the one guy that you bet that, man, my numbers absolutely say I should be betting is Nikolai Højgaard. I'm going to skip over him this week. I always get probably too injury nervous, and he had the injury a little bit earlier in the season, and it's been just kind of some mixed results. You brought it up, mixed results, but when he's played well, he's played really well. So little concern there for me, enough to pass on him. But look, he is like, what, last 20 round model, he was the second highest rated guy for me. So yeah, that's one that my numbers say I should be playing. The guy who rated out just ahead of him in that last 20 round model is actually where I started. And that is with one Chris Rayton. We've seen him coming on strong. You've been betting him. We've had a few bets on him recently. It is just, I'm going to ride the hot hand here. Almost 7.5 strokes gained on approach. Last week at the Memorial, he finishes T6. It's been an incredible run of golf for this guy. T6 Memorial, the T44 at the PGA. Okay, everybody struggled there. He won the Truist. Man, it feels like forever ago, but he won the Truist. T14 at the Cadillac, the T2 even at the Zurich. He's got a top 10 at the Valero. Some really, really good golf from Chris Rayton. And this is, man, I scoffed at some of those numbers earlier about being too short on guys. Yeah, I bet Chris Rayton at 28-1. You could say, what the hell has this guy done to have that price next year?
Well, he's won a signature event. That's one thing he's done.
Thanks, Wes. Yeah, that's right. He has done that. And really, I think when it just comes into pure recent form, man, it doesn't get much better than this right now. So I'm going to ride the hot hand. Played Rayton outright and then top 5. All these outrights I did cover with top 5s. Started my card with him. You and I, we did the same thing last week on a numbers game. We did it again this week. First name out of our mouths for this tournament, Brooks Koepka. I'm right there with you. I am a little surprised that it feels like his number's been drifting at most books, which that I'm surprised about just because of the name next to that number. I'm surprised Brooks isn't getting more attention. I'm right there with you, though. Last 20 rounds, second off the tee, 11th on approach in this field, 5th in birdie or better scoring. Man, I think we're seeing Brooks, kind of hit some new heights here back on the PGA Tour. In perfect time, it would be to pick up a win right before heading to the U.S. Open next week, where he's had a lot of success at that specific golf course, having won there the last time we played. So I'm with you on Brooks. And you mentioned the next name. I couldn't believe how long odds he was either. I feel like we're stealing Matt's spotlight a little bit because I think he's been on Alex Fitzpatrick more than the two of us. But you and I have been on a lot of Matt. I'm all over Alex this week with you. I'm right there with you. I cannot believe he was in the 40s. Just the results. Okay, it was ugly at the PGA, but T6 last week, 4th at the Truist, a top 10 at the Cadillac. He won the Zurich, won the Indian Open. You talked about all this stuff. Some wins on the season so far. So Alex Fitzpatrick like that. So 3 outrights for me: Rayton, Koepka, Fitzpatrick. And then I did go back into the top 20 markets on both Brooks Koepka and Alex Fitzpatrick as well. Getting those, like, I got plus 132 on Brooks, plus 166 on Alex. I don't recommend going heavy on placements in these courses that you're still getting a feel for. I think this is a better week to play, kind of some more outrights, less stake, backing them up. But feel pretty confident in those guys, especially Brooks, just being one of the more class players in this event. So again, all of our bets will be up at vsin.com. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, leave some comments for us. Thanks for listening on the podcast or watching on VSiN. For Wes Reynolds, I'm Kelley Bydlon. We'll catch you next week on Long Shot.